Alan Wake once wrote that Stephen King once wrote that nightmares exist outside of logic and there's little fun to be had in explanations. They're antithetical to the poetry of fear. In a horror story, the victim keeps asking why, but there could be no explanation and there shouldn't be one. My name is Swooshbear, and I'm a game reviewer. This is Alan Wake.
Oh boy.
Despite being in my backlog for so long, I didn't play Alan Wake until I kept hearing about how good Alan Wake 2 is. Remedy Entertainment is not foreign to me. I know of Alan Wake, and I've heard Control is really good too, but I've never dived into any of their works before. So I figured, why not start from the beginning? And well, the beginning of what I should play to play Alan Wake 2. Alan Wake was originally released on the Xbox 360 in 2010, with a PC version coming a few years later, which is what I'm playing. You can also find it nowadays in its remastered form on modern consoles, just good luck finding that one physically. I remember when Alan Wake was new, people really loved the gameplay gimmick, light. This game thematically focuses so much on light and darkness, and you have to use your trusty flashlight with Energizer batteries, video not sponsored by Energizer, to effectively remove the shadows of enemies before you can defeat them. It makes a fun twist where your flashlight batteries are arguably more important than conserving your ammo or health. And Alan Wake is dark, very dark game. Light is so important thematically and in the gameplay, as intended, and it works very well here, where a lot of the fear in this game is navigating the shadows that get to the next part of your mission. And some of these enemies are tough. Not so much the humanoid shadows, but when floating boxes can KO you at lightning speed, like what the heck? Ow! You get a good balance of exploration in Alan Wake as well, through the woods of the Northwest and the small town of Bright Falls. The map is pretty big, with larger sections letting you even drive vehicles for easier travel. The game really doesn't overstay its welcome either, until the last chapter in my opinion, which is basically a big trek back from one area all the way to another area on the side of the map, which you are going to basically trigger the end of the game. And you know, this is one of those games where they know it's the end, so they just throw everything at you, but only at an increased difficulty, and just way more because they're like, alright, the game's ending, let's go, let's go. It's one of those games. And a lot of this I just kind of ran past because I was like, okay, I get it, time to end the game. Some of its gameplay quirks like that make me feel like it's a very early 2010s game in its game design, but again, it's still very fun for other aspects. While being so dark and ominous with its setting, Alan Wake can give you some good frights that don't solely rely on jump scares, but had moments that did make me jump due to how engaged I was with the game and the story. There's a lot of random objects flying at you, and a lot of times you have to find where the danger or enemies are coming from, which makes you play in a more frantic state when danger is around. Especially the birds. I hate those birds. To help, Alan Wake has a cinematic dodge feature to quickly avoid danger that also slows down time a bit, but these take some getting used to. See ya. Whoa! To me, this game even has a tiny bit of Resident Evil 4 DNA here, with its own hedge maze and even a Donkey Kong minecart bit. So what is it that makes Alan Wake stand out? One could point at the novel gameplay, the way that you use light to your advantage before anything else, but in reality, it's the way in which Alan Wake tells its story. You follow Alan Wake, a famous writer on vacation who gets wrapped up in the mysteries of town as he's going on a vacation with his fiancée/wife. Wait a minute, is that Microsoft Sync? I have that. I'm not going to be spoiling anything about the story here, but Alan Wake to me is defined by how it tells its story. So much of it plays out like you would imagine a book. The small, quiet town with its distinct residents and dark secrets, Alan Wake is a protagonist in the story in more ways than one. As you progress, you find a ton of manuscript pages that are actively telling a story. Your story. You'll escape from enemies, solve a puzzle, or prevail in combat, and then find a written record of what you've just done.
The pipe wrenched itself loose from the bridge's steel framework. Wrapped in darkness, it floated in midair, twitching. For a moment, I didn't understand what I was looking at. The heavy object lurched at me with impossible force. I threw myself out of the way, but just barely.
It is fascinating to read and play, and then piece together the greater story here. I feel like not a lot of games really push the how they tell their narrative, and Alan Wake is so unique in that. There's distinct chapters too, each with their own personal ending song, and even has a very typical
Previously on Alan Wake.
that adds to the mystery TV series vibe that this game has. There's a lot of very distinct style and flavor sprinkled in this game. There's, for example, some TVs that show what appears to be like Twilight Zone-esque episodes that are with real actors in them. There's also a bunch of hidden QR codes that when you scan lead to the Alan Wake website or just some random memes. The stories and characters themselves are very exaggerated and animated, distinct and memorable. Through your journey, you'll get to use your phone, video not sponsored by Verizon,
I need to take this.
to interact with these fun side characters that help push the story forward. I like Barry, Alan's agent, who adds a real comedic tone to some of these moments. And as someone who has recently watched Twin Peaks, I cannot ignore the similarities it has with Bright Falls. From the classic Northwest setting, pine trees, a classic diner, the lamp lady, come on. Even if this influence is worn heavily on its sleeve, Alan Wake still does a great job to make the locations and lives of those in Bright Falls feel believable. If you told me this was a real town they based the game on, I'd believe you. Even today, Alan Wake is worth your time. It's a relatively short game, and even if the core gameplay of third-person shooting, navigating light, rinse and repeat can get a bit dull, it still keeps you hooked with its narrative storytelling, twists, and fun moments. I love the way that this game plays out its narrative as you are playing the game too, and that gimmick in itself, if you even want to call it a gimmick, is just really interesting to me and how it drives you forward to want you to keep going. Much like reading a really good book that you cannot put down, Alan Wake is a video game that you have difficulty putting down. That sounded a lot better in my head. The original PC version looks and plays totally fine to me, but you can just see how crusty these cutscenes look, and the lip sync isn't great either. It didn't really bother me, and since this version has been sitting in my Steam library for over a decade, I figured it was better than spending money to play this game. But even still, I'd say it is worth spending money to play this game. I've now learned that there's nothing quite like the touch of a Remedy game, and I'm ready for more of them.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's all we have for you tonight. I want to thank all our guests for the evening. Alan Wake, Sam Lake. Once more, do the face for us, Sam. There it is. And our musical guests, Poets of the Fall. Thank you, and good night.
Previously on Alan Wake. I'm having so much fun playing fucking hell. I'm having so much fun playing Baldur's Gate 3, but I find myself unable to stop thinking about Alan Wake. It's such a fun game I need to keep playing. There's still so much to play and experience in the game. Will I ever be able to finally go back to Baldur's Gate 3, or will I be stuck here, constantly writing and playing Alan Wake in preparation for Alan Wake 2? I don't know, but I do know I really just want to play Baldur's Gate 3.